What would you expect from a man who called his company the Rockstar Academy? You'd expect him to be a rock star, and that's exactly what Dustin Hogan is. A thoroughbred entrepreneur who started his first business at 17, let it all go to pursue his dreams of becoming a DJ, and then used his charisma and the ability that he had gained from performing in front of hundreds to now becoming a world-class speaker holding seminars that fill up rooms. We sit down in his beautiful condo to talk about how all that he has done in his life has added to his strengths or weaknesses. What are the skills necessary to be an engaging speaker? How does he deal with the insecurities that come with putting yourself out there? And finally, what does it take to organize and promote large events that attract the size of crowds that his events do? Hey my fellow entrepreneurs, I hope all is well wherever you are. This is Ahmed Aibak, the founder and host of the Voice of the Entrepreneur podcast and show. The podcast has now been going on for a little more than a year, and I hope that you've been on this podcast with us before. But if you haven't and don't know what we're all about, then let me tell you a little bit more about the Voice of the Entrepreneur. I bring in successful entrepreneurs on this show to share their stories, their struggles, and of course, more importantly, their lessons, to inspire other entrepreneurs like yourself, like me, to take action, to take courageous action and move forward. I do a weekly podcast interview and a solo podcast called the Consciouspreneur Journal. You can find both of these on our website at voebheard.com, or you can check us out on iTunes under Voice of the Entrepreneur. I've had over 40 guests on my show so far, and they've been from various industries and backgrounds, but they've all had one thing in common. They are all heart-centered entrepreneurs that love what they do and the people that they do it for. We also just recently started the Consciouspreneur Forum, where I invite a panel of entrepreneurs to discuss the challenges and opportunities in a particular industry in front of a live audience of emerging entrepreneurs. You can find information on all of this good stuff on our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/the Consciouspreneur Forum. So I first met Dustin Hogan when I attended one of his seminars. Instantly, I felt a powerful connection with his message and knew that I had to have him on the show. His story is very similar to mine, and in the world of entrepreneurs, his is the story we can all relate with. His journey has not been straightforward, but that is precisely what has made him who he is, and that is why I wanted to share his story. He has had the courage to do many things throughout his life, things that felt right, and that eventually brought him to where he is today, connecting the dots now as he looks backwards. A creative and an artist, Dustin has always inspired himself and others to leap into the unknown and follow their dreams. He is now living his own dreams as a man who has dedicated his life's work to helping others achieve what they desire by breaking the shackles of their mind. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I did as well. Take some notes because he really lays it out for anyone that's looking to become a speaker. Dustin, welcome to the Voice of the Entrepreneur. I am so glad that you invited me into your house here. And we're looking at this wonderful, beautiful view of New West, BC, and it's phenomenal. You must be very inspired to stay here and work.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's beautiful to kind of just sit out and look at the view and be able to do my thing and get inspired, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Dustin, tell us a little bit about yourself and the Rockstar Academy. I know I've been to one of the events with the Rockstar Academy. I love the name, by the way.
Thank you.
Like a really cool name. It makes you feel like a rock star, especially when I'm in the room with you, with the energy that I've experienced. Tell us a little bit about that, and why did you decide to start the Rockstar Academy?
Yeah, I mean, it's really kind of like the last 15, 20 years of my life, I feel have been leading up to what it is that I'm doing right now. So I've kind of been an entrepreneur most of my life. You know, I've never really done the corporate thing. The only corporate job I had was for 14 days, which was 13 days too long. You know, so first my experience in entrepreneurship was starting up a landscaping business when I lived in Calgary. You know, built that up. Then kind of moved into music, which is my first passion, you know, music production and DJing. And that's actually what brought me out here to BC. So I sold the landscaping business in 2010, you know, actually moved back in with my parents for a year to kind of save up enough money to move out here, go to music school. And then I graduated from music production school in 2012 and then actually started teaching music production. in a private high school here in Kitsilano, a place called Brain Boost, just working with some incredible kids. So that was my first kind of step into speaking or teaching. You know, it wasn't personal growth or business, it was teaching music, which then led me into Toastmasters, starting to do presentations and speeches, and recognizing that same kind of exhilaration that I had as a DJ, but now speaking and sharing my ideas and my philosophies. You know, and then very organically, people just started asking for coaching, first in public speaking, then in some entrepreneurship type stuff, then in personal growth. And then a couple of years ago, I said, okay, there's a possible business idea here. There was nothing was really formed as the Rockstar Academy that you see today. Right. But it took another one of those leap of faith moments where I had to say, okay, I'm either going to do this as a hobby still, or I'm going to take it to the next level. So yeah, we took it to the next level, kind of created this concept of the Rockstar Academy, and have been just, rocking and rolling ever since.
Right. Why the name the Rockstar Academy?
Well, I wanted something that incorporated my background in music, but also kind of tied into this whole idea of becoming a rock star in life, you know, either in business or in your personal life or in your relationships, but still had that tie to my background in music and in DJing. So to me, the whole idea of the Rockstar Academy really embodies everything that means something to me, from music to inspiration to, you know, being big, bold, and beautiful in life, and really just kind of making it happen. So that's where the name the Rockstar Academy came from.
It's a good name. It's like it inspires people to move and take action.
For sure.
Yeah. And Dustin, what is a speaker? Like, what is a public speaker? For the people that don't know exactly what a public speaker does, can you shed some light on what that career entails?
That's a big question. I'm still trying to figure it out myself, actually. You know, I think when you think of the term public speaker, people often think of like a motivational speaker, someone that kind of comes in to hype you up. And certainly that is a speaker, but there's so many other kind of areas or niches that you could fit into if you wanted to incorporate speaking. So you could be doing the motivational thing, you could be a keynote person that goes into businesses or corporations to kind of, you know, lead sales training. You could be just a trainer within an organization, just delivering one specific topic. You could take the seminar route, which I've done. But prior to that, you know, I did a little bit of work in high schools. I also went into kind of the corporate world as well too, delivering, you know, shorter presentations. So it's really, there's no one thing that you could say that you're a speaker. There's different paths. Just like any business has got different paths that you could take. I've just taken the kind of the seminar workshop approach because I really want to build a community. You know, originally when I said I want to be a speaker, incorporate speaking, I thought I wanted to go into corporations and you know, hype people up. I did that a couple times only to recognize that oftentimes in the corporate environment, people in that audience, they're not there to necessarily see you or because they're interested in your content. They might just be forced to be there because it's part of their job. And that wasn't inspiring to me because it's like, you know, there's nothing worse than coaching somebody that doesn't want to be coached or teaching somebody that doesn't want to be taught. So that's why I said, okay, I want to build a community. Best way to do that is create my own content, create my own workshops. Heck of a lot more work, but the people that are there to kind of, because they want to be, you know, they're choosing to come spend time with me.
Yeah, like you want to work with people that are motivated enough to be there because they want to make that difference.
Exactly.
They want to make the change.
Exactly.
And that's why you decided that the corporate world or the corporate route wasn't going to fulfill what you wanted.
For sure.
Because people have to kind of go to those things as part of the fulfillment of their job.
Exactly.
That's awesome, man. That means the people that you're working with are empowered enough by themselves to come to these things and are motivated enough to put the time and effort to do the work that you're encouraging them to do.
Exactly.
Right? And obviously you love that and you build on that energy.
Exactly.
That's great, Dustin. I've talked to you. I know your story a little bit, and I know it's very similar to mine. Yeah. And by that I mean you've done so many different things in your life. You've been an entrepreneur, obviously. You've done landscaping, and I think you were a DJ and all those different things. There is this concept of, you know, I'm the jack of all trades, but master of none, and I feel that way in some ways. Sometimes I felt insecure about that. I felt like I don't know any one thing, and I don't specialize in one thing. Do you feel that way as well, or do you see that as your strength rather than a weakness? Like, what's your thought on that?
I mean, I think previous to the last year and a bit, I was definitely a jack of all trades and a master of none because I thought that's what I needed to do. I didn't recognize that actually having a smaller focus is how people create greatness in their lives. You know, I mean, think of a company like Apple or Tesla. I mean, they specialize in a very small area and they do that super, super well. Yeah. And really, it's taken me, you know, most of my life to figure that out. And finally, in the last couple of years, I've recognized that to get anything done, I've got to be incredibly focused. So really over the last 12 to kind of 18 months, I've narrowed my focus down into what it is that I'm doing. So it's just the seminars, some group coaching, some individual coaching. Really, that's what it comes down to. And even that is focused in on personal growth. Right? I'm not trying to do too many things at once because once I kind of master what it is that I'm doing, then I can take that credibility and then start expanding it out. But until we get one area of our life kind of rocking and rolling, we can't really do anything well if we're not doing one thing well.
So do you think that it takes that experimentation approach to life and doing many things to then find your focus? Because there's a lot of people that focus on something without experimenting. They just know that they need to do this. They might not know it as a calling of theirs, but they know it because that's the thing that they have to do or they have been conditioned to doing it. Now, do you think that it's important or necessary as an entrepreneur to do the different things in life, to experiment with different things, to then come to a focal point later in your life rather than in your early 20s, for example?
I mean, just speaking from my perspective, I definitely had to experiment. You know, talk to my parents, talk to my beautiful wife is like, you know, certainly shiny object syndrome exists in my life. But if it wasn't a willingness to try stuff out, to say, hey, do I want to go down this path or do I want to go down that path? I don't think that would have given me the knowledge that I need to determine what it actually is that I want to do, right? Because, I mean, in my perspective, I had to experiment to figure out what I like, to figure out what I don't like, and really get that clarity. Some other people, that's the total opposite. They choose one thing, they go down that path, and that's the path that they stick with. In my experience, that hasn't worked out for me, so I definitely encourage a lot of people to do that, is just be willing to try, because when we make a decision to go for something, we're going to get what we need, not what we want, right? You know what I mean? And to me, the only way to figure that out is like, okay, this is where I'm compelled to go down. This is where my passion is. Perfect example is me moving out here for music production school 7 years ago. Had I not made that decision, that wouldn't have then led me to teaching, which then wouldn't have led me to Toastmasters, which then wouldn't have led me to speaking, which then wouldn't have led me to doing what it is right now, the Rockstar Academy, which is a perfect fit for who I am as a person. But if I didn't take that first decision of experimentation with, okay, I'm going to pursue this music thing, it wouldn't have created this cascading effect, which is now where we're at right now.
Yeah, exactly. And that cascading effect is what's key, at least in my opinion, because even when I was a bit younger, I went to school because I wanted to pursue a certain education because I thought that was going to be the right fit for me. And I did that because that was a convention. But it wasn't the right fit, and I had to go and then experiment on different things. I had always been an experimenter, but I went crazy on experimenting, went to Africa, did some crazy things, and then realized that that was not going to be it for me, that I had to do something else. People are afraid of doing that. I know entrepreneurial people might be a little less afraid, but the ones that are afraid don't experiment, don't go out there and do these things. So there's value in this, right? There's value in doing this. And you would encourage entrepreneurs to go out there and do this.
Oh, I'd encourage anybody, entrepreneur or not, is to me, that's the way that we grow. You know, we grow through our fear, right? Courage is not the absence of fear. It's feeling the fear and doing it anyway, and then continuing to do that, right? So an entrepreneur or not an entrepreneur is to experiment, to try things out. I mean, it doesn't need to be full-time experimentation, but side hustle, you know, 5 hours a week, whatever it's got to be.
Yes, the side hustle. I have so much respect for the side hustle now because it allows you to do what you want to do on the side, but still have a safety net available for you that will keep you intact or will keep you all right, you know? So totally agree with that. Dustin, what are the specific key skills of being a good presenter other than being a good speaker, like other than having, you know, a good presence, what are the key skills do you think that people should look at and focus on if they're thinking about being a public speaker?
So the first thing is message matters more than anything. So you could be technically incorrect in everything that you should be doing as a speaker, but as long as your message is intact and your message is impactful, all the technical stuff is secondary. I mean, just look at some of the most successful TED Talks out there. These aren't necessarily expert presenters or presenting experts that are necessarily these polished speakers, but they've got a message that's so compelling and so impactful. That's what people resonate with. So that's the first piece. The second piece as a presenter is not about you. It's about your audience. Because the audience is only sitting there thinking, what is in it for me?
Absolutely.
So we, as presenters, we have to ensure that we're giving the audience what they expect, what they want, and then 10 times that. Because that's truly where the value is. And unfortunately, we live in this society of like distraction. So if you're up on stage as a presenter and it's all about you, the audience is going to tune out and they're not going to listen. So even if you do have a good message, they're going to tune out. So first and foremost is to get that message down. And second is to remember it's about the audience. You know, it's about the experience that they're having with your message.
Wow. So number one, message.
Yes.
And then number two, it's about the audience.
For sure.
It's not about you.
Totally.
Let's speak a little bit about the message.
Yes,
I love that piece because with so many of my guests, that message piece has always been key in their success because, like you mentioned, it's the message that resonates, not the technical skills, not how well you can speak, not the way you look or all of that stuff. How do you refine your message, Dustin? Like that's the key, right? How do you first know your message? Like how do you come to knowing your message? And then once you have a broad sense of what your message is, how do you refine it to make it even more specific, even more impactful?
You get out there and you just start speaking, right? I mean, the best way to become a better writer is to practice writing. The best way to become a better speaker is to just practice speaking. So it's like, you know, I have an idea for, you know, let's go 3-4 years back before I started doing any sort of professional speaking. I had content that I was interested in, right? And then I just started getting up in front of audiences and testing that, seeing what resonates. Because if it resonates with me internally, that's great. But it's truly what happens when I'm in front of an audience. So it was just, there's a whole adage of stage time is getting up there in front of people, sharing what you think you want your message to be, and then seeing how that resonates with people, and then constantly refining it, you know? I mean, I've been delivering similar content over the last 3 or 4 years, but it's just constantly refining it every single time that I get up on stage, seeing how I can maybe shift a couple words to make the impact deeper. It really just comes down to practicing your craft, right? The whole 10,000 hour rule. You just got to get up there and keep doing it.
Keep doing it.
Yeah.
I think that is really the key, is to keep doing it. The persistence and the consistency of delivering your message will automatically refine that. I've seen that in my case as well. But here's the thing: when you stand up in front of people, or it doesn't even have to be in front of a live audience, but when you put yourself out there, for example, on social media, there is a possibility of criticism. There is a possibility of judgment, even if it's not pronounced and even if it's not so out there in your face. People can get discouraged. I've gotten discouraged many of the times, and I felt like, what am I doing? This can't be it. Like, I can't be putting myself out there and feeling this way. And usually it's, you know, that first time that when it happens, and then the chances of being discouraged and quitting is the highest at that point.
Totally.
What have you done to keep going out there and delivering your message? I'm sure you faced, you know, judgment or maybe even criticism at times. But I would also say that a vast majority of people have probably supported you. But how have you gotten past that self-judgment, perhaps, that could have made you quit and say, I can't do this anymore?
It comes down to Toastmasters. I come back to this with almost everybody that I talk to who asks me about speaking is Toastmasters is a community that is the most supportive community you could possibly be in. And for those listening that don't know what Toastmasters is, basically it's clubs worldwide. I think there's 400,000 members around the world where you get up every week and you get to practice your speaking skills. And in a safe environment. So if there's anywhere that you want to fall on your face and make a massive mistake and be supported, that is the place to do it. And not only that, it's going to teach you the fundamentals of speaking. So you're not only delivering an amazing message, but you're delivering it in a polished, organized, articulated way. And then you're getting to do that every single week, going back to what I just said about stage time, right? I mean, I've been a member now for 6 years, and in 6 years, I maybe missed less than 10 meetings, and it's really just that constant practice. But if I look back to the very first presentation I did 6 years ago, compared to the presentations I do now, like, you can't even compare those two.
It's the evolution.
It is. Right? But if you look at it, there was no singular point where all of a sudden I transformed. It was just like these tiny little incremental changes and shifts, right? You don't go to the gym once and become Arnold Schwarzenegger. You do that over the course of time. Right. So really, to me, that's a resource that is inexpensive, that is accessible for pretty much anybody and everywhere if you truly want to incorporate speaking. Even if you don't want to be a speaker, you just want to communicate better, one-on-one, small groups. It's a great opportunity to do that and to get up every single week practicing. And if you're a real go-getter, joining multiple clubs. I mean, you could be literally on stage every single night, and that would pretty much turbocharge your ability to hit those 10,000 hours.
Yes, absolutely. Right? I agree. Here's a thought that popped into my head as you were speaking about this. Do you think that a safe zone can become too safe?
Totally.
Right? Where people say, this 100%. Is too safe, I'm good here, I don't want to go in front of these people, or the courage to then go out of that comfort zone becomes less available. Do you think that? Quick announcement before we hear from Dustin, my friends. We are soon launching our second masterclass on how to spread your message as a quiet leader without the need to be loud. I have partnered up with Faris Khalife, who is a leading quiet leadership coach. We feel a tremendous amount of gratitude for all the quiet leaders that attended and gave us the chance to serve them in the first masterclass. We know they got a lot out of this because we got some rave reviews. Faris and I will be taking all the lessons that we've learned and are continuously learning in growing our communities and businesses to show you how to spread your message in the same way and become a successful quiet leader yourself. So if you're a leader, especially a quiet leader, then check out the course launch page at introvertleader.voebheard.com to learn more about the content and start dates.
100%. So I stayed in the safe zone for 3 years until I did my first kind of professional speech, in front of an audience that wasn't going to give me a standing ovation no matter what I did. And that was the whole idea of okay, I've reached a plateau. Now, as somebody that puts my own personal growth kind of on the top of the list, is like, okay, now I've got to take it to the next level. So now I've got to start looking for organizations outside of the safe zone. And that was taking it to the next level. So not everybody wants to do that, though. And there's nothing wrong with that. But somebody that's joining a group like Toastmasters or, another organization where you can practice, that has an intention of being a professional speaker or incorporating speaking, probably already has that mindset of growth ingrained in them. And just as entrepreneurs, naturally, we're always seeking growth and expansion. So I expected that moment to come. And when I got up on that first professional stage, I had that same fear, that same anxiety that I did that first 5-minute Toastmasters presentation that I did. But now I'd built up that confidence. Now I'd built up some ability to say, you know what, you got this. And it was the same DJing, right? I started DJing in my parents' basement. It was literally for nobody. Fast forward, 5 or 6 years later, in front of audiences of a couple thousand people, terrified, but still understanding that I'd built up that foundation of working my way up to that level.
Right. So it takes yourself to push yourself,
for sure,
to be in front of the people and get out of your safe zone. I think that's the tough part. Yeah, that's the 100%, tough part.
100%.
Man, tell me, do you wrestle with the thought of why would someone pay to come watch me or come see me? What do I have of value that others would pay to come get from me?
Story of my life, man. I think that's the story of every entrepreneur's life, every speaker's life. It's like, why would this person pay to spend time with me? And I don't think that struggle will ever go away, because that's kind of the growth that I need to to deal with myself, you know, and that we all need to deal with at times.
Right, but you know, wrestling with that thought is one thing, but you're a successful speaker, so you've obviously wrestled it down to the ground, and you've gotten over it to some extent. How other entrepreneurs that are starting out in possibly the same field, how can they get over this? Like, what do they need to tell themselves, or what kind of steps can they take to get over this limitation or fear?
I mean, it really just comes down, for me, it's been a repetition thing, you know? So as I've done a certain number of gigs, starting small, right? I mean, the first professional gig that I had, well, there was maybe 5 people in the audience, and then 10, then 20, and 30, right? So recognizing through that path just that I'm growing and people resonate with me, so trusting in that. I mean, if we want to get down to actual like tactics, things like meditation have been huge in my life for just quieting that inner critic that's often there. Not silencing it, because silencing our mind is kind of counterintuitive actually, because the nature of the mind is to seek things out. So meditation has been huge. And then I guess the biggest piece would be having solid mentors in my corner. Right? People that believe in me sometimes more than I believe in myself, and can be that voice of reason when that critic or that gremlin likes to start, you know, doing its thing. So for people out there that are just getting started, first and foremost, seek mentors. And it doesn't even need to be in person. If you read books, you've got a mentor. If you listen to podcasts, you've got a mentor, right? Listening to this podcast, you've got a mentor. Watching, you know, stuff on YouTube. Those are mentors. So first and foremost is find and lean into mentors when you need. You know, things like meditation have been huge for me to kind of slow those thoughts down and gain perspective on them. And then it just comes down to experience, starting small and then working out. You know, the best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time.
Yeah, totally. And, you know, it's great, like the way you broke it down. This is something very, this advice is so doable. Like you can implement it tomorrow if you wanted to, right? So it's great. Dustin, you're a charismatic guy. I've seen you speak, and you're definitely a charismatic guy. I've also heard from several influencers, if you will, that if you're not good looking or charismatic, then speaking is a tough gig, because people do get attracted to the ones that have, you know, a certain persona, a certain charisma to them. And, you know, we can't ignore that. I think that is definitely a possibility. In fact, it could be a reality. Do you think that that's important, or do you think that knowing your content or having great content or unique content versus having charisma is more important? Like, what do you think about that?
I mean, I think people are going to judge you either way. If you come up on stage with the $10,000 suit, or if you come up on stage with ripped jeans, somebody in the audience is going to judge you either way, right? And early on, one of my mentors said to me, you know, 10% of people are going to love you, 10% of people are going to hate you, and 80% of people are undecided. So it's your job to work towards the 80%, right? No matter if you're the best looking person in the world or if you're not. To me, that doesn't really matter, because that's surface level. And the moment that you start speaking and delivering your message, people are going to resonate with that at a level far beyond just the physical, far beyond the outfit that you have, or the charisma that you have. And to me, it's really going back to what we said earlier, is focus on message first, right? I mean, there's podcasts that people listen to where they're not looking at the speaker, right? They're just simply hearing it, and that comes down to the message. So, I mean, I'd say there's some truth to that, but that's only very surface level.
I think there's also this fear that if we did admit to that, we'd become superficial in some sense. So we tend to stay away from that because we don't want to admit that part of our psyche. You know?
For sure.
But I do see that if you look at the successful ones, the successful presenters, they're charismatic people,
for sure,
that really have a way of carrying themselves. You know, and I see that. But I think the message piece is definitely an important one. A good mix of the two.
And I think you're probably bang on. That's exactly where it is. And I mean, there are things that you can do to kind of put yourself in a better position. You know, always show up dressing presentable, right? I mean, because as much as we want to admit it or not, people do have judgments when they first meet you. Absolutely. You know, and even if they don't speak to you, just by seeing you. So do whatever you need to do to kind of put yourself in that position. But with that being said, is show up and dress, you know, in line and authentically with you.
Yes.
Not because you're trying to be somebody else or impress somebody by the way that you look, right? And even initially on for me, as I was trying to be, you know, this speaker over here or that speaker over there, and not just in the way that I looked, but in the way that I acted. And that created just zero connection with the audience.
Yeah.
As soon as I started allowing myself to be myself, which is sometimes serious, sometimes goofy, sometimes energetic, sometimes not, all of a sudden people were more attracted to that.
And that's part of the charisma.
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
Being real, being you.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a great point. I think to have charisma is to just allow yourself to be comfortable in being yourself.
Yeah.
Whatever that might be.
That exactly is charisma. You know? I mean, it does not depend like what you look like, how you look like. It's really about being yourself and allowing yourself to be that way. So I'm so glad that you made that point, because I see a lot of people, entrepreneurs that are just starting out, that don't want to put themselves out there because they're afraid of judgment.
Yeah.
Right? Even the ones that have, you know, that are charismatic within their friend circle and their social circle. Yeah. They want to put themselves out there because of this thing. So that it's a great point that you made. Being okay with yourself, allowing yourself to be who you are, then that charisma is just going to come through.
100%.
Man. Okay, let's get into the actual nitty-gritty or details of event organization, because that's a big piece, right?
Yes.
Like, organizing an event. What does it take to organize an event where 100 people show up and you have to take them through a certain process? There's always a process, a system, a funnel, if you will.
Yeah.
What does it take to organize an event like that in terms of like, and I know this is a big question, so you could probably you could talk about this for hours, but in a gist for, you know, again, someone thinking about putting an event like this, like what are the things that they should be thinking about in terms of logistics, preparation, invitations, you know, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, so first and foremost is make sure the content is solid, you know, and once the content is solid, it really just comes down to promoting it and marketing it, because you could have the best content in the world, like the best, but if nobody is there to hear it, it doesn't matter how great your content is. And I learned that the hard way early on, because prior to the Rockstar Academy, booked my first seminar, and the week prior to that seminar had 0 people registered. Literally 0 people registered. The night before the seminar, 0 people registered. And I all of a sudden realized that, my gosh, it doesn't matter how good my content is, if I'm not promoting this and marketing this properly, it doesn't matter. Fast forward in a year after that, the next seminar that we booked, we had 120 people there. And the reason being is because 80% of my time was about promoting that event, ensuring people were going to show up. And the way that I did that was, you know, guerrilla marketing, out there, shaking hands, kissing babies, meeting people, networking events, speaking at other events, and then inviting people to my workshop. And then when I was inviting people, ensuring that I was letting that person know that they could invite their friends. Because I only know so many people, but if you bring 2 people and the other guy or gal brings 2 people, before you know it, you've got a full space.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it really comes down to just ensuring that you market it properly. You know, things like choosing a venue. I mean, you just have to kind of determine your budget, and then start looking for places. I like to choose places that are transit accessible, so people have an easy time to get there. Logistics, you know, as far as the room goes, I mean, that's a whole other conversation, but you want to make sure it flows well. People can get in safely, get out safely. You know, then you've got to ensure that you've got the sound set up there. So if you need to rent some stuff, you can do that. But when it comes to the actual content, for my 2-hour workshop, I probably spent, you know, 200 hours actually creating that content. And that seems like an insane amount of time, and it is. But the cool thing is now that content's created, I'm just adjusting it, you know. So we've done 6 2-hour workshops over the last 14 months. Content has remained similar, you know, or quite the same. It's just small little tweaks to it. So now that things are momentum's building and it's moving forward, it's just these small little tweaks. But the big piece that I always come back to is if you're not promoting it, you're not marketing it, nobody's going to show up. And it doesn't matter what you're talking about, how epic your content is, how great of a speaker you are. If nobody's there to hear you, people think that they're just going to put up an ad on Facebook or a post on, Eventbrite.
That's what I was going to say next,
right? Is no, that's not the case. And even when somebody does say that they're going to come to your event, you've got to ensure that you follow up with them. So like for us, we use a 5 to 6 email campaign following up with people 10 days out, a week out, 3 days out, 2 days out. Because the only person that's thinking about your event 24 hours a day is you. Everybody has so many things to go on. Yeah. They're almost not even going to remember your event until the day of. They probably won't even remember the name, the location. So you've got to just constantly, authentically remind people about what it is that you're doing.
Yes.
And then, say you have some people not show up, make sure you follow up with them after and invite them to the next event. I mean, I just had one of my friends who I've been inviting to the event for over a year, and one way or another, she wasn't able to make it. Finally, she was able to make it out last week. Nice. Had I stopped following up and being persistent, she would have not come.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's like the 2 hours on stage is the smallest piece of it. It's the 100 hours prior to that 2 hours to get the people in the room and ensure that they're there. That's the key.
Yeah, so to market it, let's just talk a few minutes about that.
Yeah.
Marketing is obviously very critical in promoting an event like that, for sure. Networking events, you said.
Yes.
You said speaking engagements. What else can people do when they're starting out, when they don't have speaking engagements, for example, where they don't get invited? What can they do to spread the word outside of the social media realm?
So for our first event, basically what I did is I just created a list of every person that I knew in Vancouver that I thought might be interested, and I sent them a personal email. I didn't put their name on a list. I literally sent probably 1,000 handwritten or hand-typed emails asking people if they wanted to come. If they said yes, then I manually registered them. So it's a lot of just like sweat equity. For our first 4 events, I spent $0 on marketing. And we had, 400 people come to those first 4 events with $0 of marketing budget, simply because that wasn't in our budget. The only thing that I had on my side was time. And to me, when someone personally connects with me, I'm way more willing to come.
For sure.
So I used that just mentality of like, if I authentically connect with people, authentically invite them, then they're going to come out. And then once they come out, maybe then I'm going to get invited to a speaking event. So it's really just kind of creating that momentum. And then in the networking, not just networking to invite people, but networking for speaking events. Right? And really just focusing in on where it is that I needed to go, but also understanding it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, right? We can get so caught up in I need this tomorrow, I need this yesterday, I need, but no, we're in it for the long haul.
Yeah, and the thing is, you can choose to focus on the wrong things and results don't happen. And that's one of the issues, I say, is that people get scattered, right? You have too many things going on. You focus on the wrong things. You let go of the things that really matter, and then things don't materialize.
Yeah.
So marketing and promoting your event, if you're doing an event or any other, like a business activity.
100%. If nobody knows about you or hears it doesn't matter what you're selling or what you have to offer. People need to hear about it.
Absolutely.
And that is not spoken enough, in my opinion. It's like that's the fuel to keep the business going. It is getting the word out there.
Right. I think people, it's easy to forget that it is a business. And if you don't do marketing, if you don't promote, then the product is not going to go off the shelf, right?
For sure.
Because if you have a great message, there's a tendency to think that, people will like this. They will want to come to it because the message is great. But like you said, if you've got a great product on the shelf, if you don't tell people about it, then no one's going to really know.
Totally. I mean, think of the number of musicians that have sold their CDs out of the back of their car. Greatest musicians of all time, but until somebody heard about them, they had to do what they had to do to get the name out, right? And then things go viral, right?
Yes. Okay, Dustin, this question I want to, not a personal question, but it's an interesting one. And I've been thinking in my mind what your answer is going to be. So let me just ask you, who's your role model, Dustin?
who do you want to be like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And I don't mean like be like someone, but you want to emulate the kind of community that they've created. Who's that for you?
So is this like in the business or is this in life in general? Because
I would say as a speaker,
okay,
as a public speaker, what you have right now and the force of your Rockstar Academy, how do you see that evolving, and who or what organization would you most want to model that?
That's a great question. So it's actually a combination. There's no one person that I just kind of flow to. I love Gary Vaynerchuk and the message that he delivers, because he's just all about practicality and telling you like it is, you know, and he's super direct, and you love him or you hate him, but he's going to tell it exactly like he is. So I love that from a speaking perspective. I love the business model Tony Robbins has. So it's not just big events, it's not just coaching, and it's not just business or life. It's a kind of a combination of all of that. And I mean, he's taken 35, almost 40 years to build that out. But if we're looking, you know, 10 years down the line or 20 years down the line, from a business perspective, I love his business model. Then, you know, someone like a Wayne Dyer, which is kind of the polar opposite of a Gary Vaynerchuk.
Right.
Just his connection to his message and his connection to people, I absolutely love that and resonate with that. And, you know, when you come to my events, it's kind of a combination of the two of those. You know, I'm talking all about connecting with who it is that we are, but then I offer very practical, direct, you know, to the point strategies for kind of going for that. And I really think that any speaker or musician or anybody that's successful or doing something successful is a combination and amalgamation of every kind of experience that they've had. And really that's kind of, I see where I'm going, is I'm taking the best of all of the content and people that I've listened to and putting my own spin on it. There's no new information out there. There's just new ways to deliver it. So there isn't one single person. It's probably a combination of those three and other people that are similar to that.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, Vancouver's got a great community of speakers and people that are in this space. But I feel like 10 years from now, Dustin Hogan, you're going to put Vancouver on the map because of that. You know, come on, I'm putting this on you right now. You got a lot of pressure now, bro.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate that.
But I think you know, I've seen you speak. I think you got a great community behind you. And I only see great things for you. So
cool, man. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming out here and sharing your thoughts with me, man. I know so many people are gonna just really get real value from what you just shared. So appreciate that.
Thank you so much. This has been awesome.
My fellow consciouspreneur, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode with Dustin Hogan. His story gives me the courage to move in the direction of my dreams, take risk, and not be afraid of what may come. You can help us grow this community by rating this podcast on iTunes, because more ratings means more people can listen to this message. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or subscribe to our newsletter on voebher.com so you don't miss out on the really amazing guests that we have lined up in the upcoming weeks. Check out our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/The Consciouspreneur Forum. And until I see you again next time, have a great one, my friend.